Google Earth has been around since 2005, and since then thousands of users have found strange things and unusual anomalies. Today I'll be taking a look at the top 15 strangest sightings found on Google Earth. Number 15. Iraq's Lake of Blood. The Earth is made of, well, earthy colors, greens, browns, and of course those big blues. But what about bright red? That's definitely not a color you see all the time. But if you're surfing around on Google Earth, that's exactly what you'll find if you hover over Sadr City in Iraq. There's a bright blood-red lake just outside of the city, with some pretty macabre theories behind it. People really started to take notice of this strange lake in 2007, and many of them agreed that the color came from the actual blood runoff from a nearby slaughterhouse that found its way into the canals. And seeing as how no one can dig up an actual explanation, you can't throw out any theories, no matter how gross they may be. But the odds of the slaughterhouse being the steppes of Kazakhstan, Google Earthers found a giant pentacle. This five-pointed circled star is 12 miles away from the nearest habited village, so needless to say, this find raised a lot of questions. Is it a portal to the underworld? Is it a symbol of the New World Order? Was it put there by lizard people, or could history go back even further, seeing as how pentacles were symbols used by ancient cultures? But believe it or not, the 1,200-foot diameter pentacle has a much simpler and far less nefarious explanation. Upon further investigation and research, the archaeologist Emma Usmanov found that this was in fact a star-shaped park. You see, Kazakhstan is a former member of the Soviet Union, and much of the USSR's buildings and infrastructure incorporated the Soviet Star, which represented the Red Army. So when the Soviet Union built this park at the height of their European reign, they made it in the shape of a star that could only be seen by an aerial view. And while this explanation may not be as exciting, it's actually pretty cool considering that it's actually an enormous art installation dug right into the sands of the Sahara Desert in 1997. And when I say enormous, I mean it, because the desert breadth takes up 1 million square feet of space. To make something like this, the team behind it displaced another 280,000 square feet of sand over the course of 2 years. The desert breath is really spectacular. Perhaps even more amazing is the fact that it's been so well maintained for nearly 30 years. And if you stumble upon an aerial view without knowing what it is, it's easy to think this is an eye of a cosmic entity staring right back at you. Number 12. The Boneyard. What used to be a small airfield and training base for the United States during World War II has now become not only an airport for an Army parachute team, but also houses some pretty impressive retired aircraft. But the aircraft are all in states of disarray and will never fly again. Known as an aircraft boneyard, at any given time you can find some retired DC-10s, 727s, 37s aircraft that he bought the airframe and removed it from the building. Over the years, he began buying and collecting more and more parts, and then eventually full aircraft, selling the used parts to commercial airliners. So you never know, the next time you fly to a family reunion, the plane just might be made of Caldwell's used parts. Number 11. Mesa Huerfanita Diamonds. There's no denying that there are some pretty stunning natural formations in the world, but they typically look a bit chaotic and lack symmetry, so when you find something a little too perfect, it can raise a number of red flags. The Mesa Huerfanita diamonds raise plenty of them. These two perfect diamonds encased in overlapping circles are etched right into the desert floor near Mesa Huerfanita in New Mexico. The finding of this gave way to a pretty wild conspiracy theory, saying that they're the markers of a hidden bunker belonging to the Church of Scientology. So are the likes of Tom Cruise and John Travolta getting into some weird stuff down there? While these capsule. Yeah, pretty strange indeed. Number 10. Gobi Desert Patterns. The Gobi Desert is vast, spanning 500,000 square miles, much of which is uncharted territory. Every desert is full of secrets, but one of these secrets has been exposed in the Gobi Desert via Google Earth. On the China side of the desert, there are these mysterious structures surrounded by even weirder patterns that seem to be etched into the landscape itself. And while these markings zig this way and zag that way in an array of random chaos, they still exist within a perfect rectangle, which definitely raises as many questions as it does eyebrows. Many experts agree that these structures are part of a secret Chinese military base that's used for everything from weapons testing to radar instrument tests. And for the funky formation of white lines, those are used to help with spy satellite calibration. So when the satellites in space see the image down below, they know exactly where in the world they are. And the water, it would at least be missing a few pieces, right? But not this one. And even weirder, if you check the records, there's no mention of a plane crash here. So are they covering things up? And wouldn't the locals know a thing or two about it? Well, it turns out that Edinburgh's sunken plane isn't really underwater at all. Quite the opposite, actually. Google Earth managed to snap this photo while the plane was flying overhead, and in order to get the sharpest, best quality image possible, their algorithm went ahead and morphed it to match the water. Google Earth apparently doesn't want airplanes in their shots, so just think about how many airplanes you've seen in flight on Google Earth and how many clouds you've seen. Number 8. The Badlands Guardian. If you're into sci-fi, then you've probably read countless books and seen hundreds of movies about old gods and ancient beings inhabiting the Earth below the cosmos above. So is that what's going on with the Badlands Guardian area in Alberta, Canada? Because when you get a bird's eye view of it from Google Earth, as awesome as the Badlands Guardian is safe from the human desire to drill for resources. Number 7. Oprah Maze. Just imagine you're scrolling around on Google Earth with some friends, and all of a sudden, you see an all-too-familiar face blown up to scale in the fields. And imagine that face was none other than Oprah Winfrey. If Dolly Parton gets her own theme park, Dollywood, then it's only fair that Oprah Winfrey gets her own corn maze. But don't worry, this isn't some strange celebrity-obsessed alien crop circle or the site of some esoteric cult. This Google Earth sighting is as strange as it is fun. In 2004, an Arizona farmer paid tribute to the famous talk show host by building the amazing maze. And if it's so big to see on Google Earth, then just how big is the maze exactly? You're looking at about 10 acres of land here. Number 6. Arctic Cave. The chances of your average person getting the chance to explore an Arctic cave are pretty slim. It's tough to get in, and even then, it's a little poof, gone as if nothing ever happened. So naturally, even more conspiracy theories formed. But you have to admit that this type of thing is pretty far from normal. The most logical explanation is that the cave was created by erosion and the glacier melting, which eventually caused the collapse 6 months later. Talk about a cold case. Number 5. Soviet Konkordsky. Here we have yet another relic of the Cold War. The Tu-144 supersonic passenger jet was built in the late 1960s as a response to British and French Concorde airliners. The Tu-144 was going to be a crown jewel of the USSR's ingenuity, a passenger jet that travels with the speed of a military aircraft. But when a prototype crashed at a 1973 air show, the project slowed down considerably, and despite the billions of dollars that went into the project, it was eventually scrapped. Cut to the fall of the Soviet Union, and the few units that were built were scrapped for parts, except one. A Tu-144 was discovered in 2014. Alright, we've seen some fun sights, some strange sights, and even some sights on Google Earth with a little bit of history. But now it's time to get into creepy territory. Some specific coordinates will take you to Prato Novoso, Italy, and sitting in the middle of nowhere is a giant pink bunny laying splayed out in the field. This pink monstrosity manages to break through that uncanny valley and play out on all of our basic human fears, looking like it will slowly lumber its way to its feet and stare you right in the eye. But luckily for all of you laporophobes out there, this giant Italian bunny was made by a group of artists from Vienna who just wanted to have a good time and give Google Earth enthusiasts something to think about. It certainly worked, and they lovingly named their giant pink bunny Hair. And if you do manage to see Hair close up, get ready, because it's a whopping 200 feet long. Number 3. Boeing 737-200 in Bali. The island of Bali is a paradise on Earth. Speculated that the plane is owned by a wealthy Australian who planned to transform it into a restaurant, but because of missing permits, that isn't happening. It's also possible that the owner ran out of money and decided to leave it there, leaving all of the containers still full of kitchenware, tables, chairs, and other heavy appliances gathering rust. And while it's impossible to enter the plane, if you climb the hill across the street, you can get up pretty close. Number 2. Azrak Oasis Wheels. Ancient civilizations really seem to be in tune with Earth and nature, and the next strange sight from Google Earth is living proof. Certain areas of Jordan's Azrak Oasis are dotted with strange spoke designs that look like large wheels. And what's amazing is that these wheels in the ground go back to 8,500 years ago. But they also seem to be perfectly positioned to align with the sunrise on the winter solstice. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Perhaps they were used by farmers of old, or perhaps they were part of a ritual to mark the beginning of the solstice. Part of the potash evaporation ponds look like pastel colors in the middle of a barren desert. And because of the rocky and mountainous terrain, even if you were just 100 feet away, if you didn't know that they were there, then you could walk up right by them. So what exactly is going on here? The mining company, Intrepid Potash Incorporated, operates a deep potash mine in Utah's Moab Desert. The miners need to pump the water from nearly 4,000 feet below the Earth's surface to actually reach the potash ore. And so the water is then sent up to the pools to dissolve the potash into a brine. And that's where things start to get strange, because the water is dyed this bright blue that lets it absorb more sunlight and heat, which means it dissolves faster. From there, the potash is removed and processed for use as fertilizer. But the process causes the pods to all change color, so while most likely you'll see bright blue when you're looking down from Google Earth, the pools can turn turquoise, orange, and even yellow or white. It's quite a strange sight and easily one of the coolest things you'll see on Google.